The ANC has received donations totaling 22.6 million rand between July and September 2021. It's according to the Independent Electoral Commission's report into party political funding, which requires disclosure for amounts above 100,000 rand. 6 political parties disclosed donations amounting to 57 million rand for the quarter. Action SA disclosed donations amounting to 16.9 million rand, while the DA received 16.8 million rand. The EFF again failed to make any disclosure. Well, for more on the story, we're joined by My Vote Counts political party funding researcher Robin Pasensi. Robin, good evening and thank you for your time tonight. Are the amount of disclosures that we are seeing in line with what perhaps people would have witnessed on the campaign trail? A lot of money went into campaigning by political parties, and many will rightfully be asking themselves whether some of those donations all came in at under the threshold for declarations.
Absolutely. First, let me say good evening to you, Kathy, and thank you for having me. I think that is the preeminent question that we have with the second set of disclosures, is because we have a very prominent example of where political funding would be needed, and that was, of course, with the local government elections that came off earlier this month. I think what we must keep in mind, again, as with the first set of disclosures, this disclosure period is running from July to the end of September. So it does cover a significant portion of the campaigning period, but by no means the entirety of that campaign period. But be that as it may, it is significant, as you already mentioned in your introduction, that large political parties like the EFF have made no disclosures. And the question there is, well, if you're running a campaign, where are your disclosures? The 6 parties that did disclose, at least 4 of them said they received in-kind donations of T-shirts or posters or the like. And if we are not seeing that from political parties now, we should most definitely be seeing that in the third quarter disclosures, which are going to run from September to November. And we should see the kind of parallel between money spent and how this related to campaigning for the local government elections.
Of course, Robin, political parties can always come back and say, especially on the issue of, people donating goods and items instead of money. They could well say, we were given T-shirts. We don't know how much those T-shirts cost, and so we didn't feel the need to declare it up front. Does this worry you?
It is a worry, but I must say that the Act is very clear on that point. If you are receiving anything that's not monetary, is not cash into your bank account as the political party, whatever the nature of the in-kind donation, be it posters, T-shirts, caps, whatever, it is incumbent upon you as the political party to provide the IEC with what you think the monetary value of that actually comes to. And even if it's less than the threshold amount of 100,000 rand, you must still note that donation, because you must still prepare a financial report for the end of the financial year. So you must still account for it. There really is no way around that point.
You've talked about the EFF not having come forward in terms of making any declarations. We had, I think, well over 300 parties and candidates that were contesting this election as well. Are you satisfied across the board that the prescripts of what this Political Party Funding Act seeks to do, that has been widely adopted by the majority of parties that contested this election?
I think that's a good question, but I think the short answer is one cannot say for certain that we are satisfied yet, because we need, in effect, at the very least 2 data sets. Number one, which is this one now, the disclosures for the second quarter, but also for the third quarter, because that's going to cover kind of the second half of campaigning that political parties would have had. So we need both of those. Also tacked onto that, we do need to see the end of year sort of financial reports, or rather end of financial year reports that political parties have to put together, so that we can retrospectively look back and hold it to account and investigate for that. So I think in accordance with that, yes, we are seeing the Act work like that. And I think the example of the EFF is a good one, because I think this is where the Act works well, in that civil society organizations like ourselves and others and activists, or just any other interested South African, has something to back them up when we ask these questions, because we know that the Act asks something of you, and there's something for us to hold you to account on if you are not actually making those disclosures as you should.
In the first quarter of reporting, the IEC did say that political parties needed to be given some level of grace, because many were still appraising themselves with the requirements and still were really coming to grips with what was actually required. Do you believe that that could still be the case?
Well, I cannot speak on behalf of the IEC in terms of whether they are still granting a grace period, but I do think that we need to be cautious if we're going to extend any amount of grace period to political parties. We don't want this to extend in perpetuity. There must come a point where we must look at what the Act is asking and look at what our political parties are doing and come out and say, yes, you are acting in accordance with this, or no, you are not. And I think, especially now with this being the second set of disclosures, with the first one, there was no example to follow. There was no exemplar. With the second set, there is. And the learning curve here should not be as steep with the first one. And that should be getting less and less with each disclosure period that we have. So we should be seeing more and more this becoming hopefully second nature to our political parties.
My vote counts as Robin Pasensi. Thanks for joining us tonight. So, yeah, we'll then have to wait for those third quarter declarations, as she said, to have a much clearer picture of what is going on in these political parties.